Yeah, it's the Matt Kwasiborski Show, calling you live and direct from Arlington, Virginia. Excuse me, on a beautiful yet allergic day here in Arlington, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. In fact, I just got back from a walk in the Arlington National Cemetery, and that's where you heard play Taps, which is played when we mourn the loss or the end of life of one of our soldiers. I'm playing that because the Phillies' 2023 season came to a halting, abrupt, disgusting, despicable, horrendous, terrible end on Tuesday night when they lost Game 7 at home. Last two games at home in Philadelphia, in the bank, where supposed to be no team could win there, especially in the postseason. The Phillies were 6-0 going into Game 6, and their season abruptly ended when the Arizona Diamondbacks, the 6th seed, like the Phillies were last year, the 6th seed, upending the 4th seed to head to the World Series. My mantra was that the Phillies became cocky and the Diamondbacks became rocky. And that is my mantra for the way this playoff series went about. If you're unfamiliar with the term rocky, it has to do in reference to the very famous movie called Rocky, ironically filmed in the city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, about an amateur boxer named Rocky who gets a shot at the heavyweight title for an exhibition bout when then the fictional champ Apollo Creed offers Rocky Balboa, an amateur boxer, not even professional, the Italian stallion, a chance to take him on. Rocky was a huge underdog, much like the Arizona Diamondbacks going into this series. The Rocky was someone who just kept chipping away during his fight with Apollo Creed at the end of the movie, much like the Diamondbacks did to the Phillies. Rocky sustained onslaughts by Apollo Creed in the ring, much like the Arizona Diamondbacks did, especially after game... Sorry about that. Especially after game 2 of the season when they lost 10-0, were outscored 15-3 in the first two games, headed back to Arizona. Much like Rocky, the Arizona Diamondbacks were not intimidated when they got into Philadelphia because they knew they could beat this team. The Philadelphia Phillies got very cocky. They absolutely hammered the Atlanta Braves again in 4 games, the much heralded Atlanta Braves. The 104 plus whatever win, 14 games win better than the Phillies. The Atlanta Braves, again, the Phillies handled them. The Diamondbacks upset the Los Angeles Dodgers. And there's no way they were going to come in to Philadelphia and beat the Phillies. And everyone, after Game 2, Diamondbacks lost Game 1 5-3. And they got obliterated in Game 2 10-0. Who then starting pitcher said, "This ballpark is not as loud as it is in Venezuela." Merrill Kelly. We beat Merrill Kelly 10-0. Respect for him, he did pitch well in that game, as when he got taken out, this bullpen kind of imploded. But the Diamondbacks did not give up. The manager, Torey Lovullo, after Game 2, said this place is just as loud as it is in Arizona, knowing he had at least 2, if not 3 games in Arizona. And they took it to them. Now, when you go to the movie Rocky as the underdog, there's some famous scenes in the movie. And it took place, and I compare it to Game 2. In the movie Rocky, Apollo Creed was the world champ. He was the much seasoned fighter. He was all worried about his publicity, giving interviews, public relations back in the 70s as much as you could, not really worrying about training. And here's Rocky, who'd wake up 4:30 in the morning, break 4 eggs and drink them raw, go out for a 10-mile run around the city, and wind up at a meat locker packing plant right around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, where he'd wrap his fist and pound away at the frozen flesh of hanging cow meat in meat lockers. And as he's hitting them, you can hear the ribs break. Bop, bop, bop. And that's what the Diamondbacks did. Every little hit, broken rib. Every little time, he just kept chipping away. And you go to the fight, the Apollo Creed versus Rocky fight. Rocky got a couple big hits in there in the beginning, knocked Apollo down. Apollo got up and kind of gained his presence. And as the fight went on, Apollo Creed is just pounding away at Rocky. Almost like the Phillies were doing to the Diamondbacks. But at one point, Creed gives him all he has And Rocky turns to him in the ring. You ain't so bad. You ain't so bad, Creed. Come on. That was game 3 of the series when the Diamondbacks won 2-1. After the Phillies had put up 10 on them, they started a pitcher of the Diamondbacks they named Fat, Pfaadt, who had a 5.72 ERA, shut down a lineup that just put a 10 spot on their second best pitcher 2 nights before in Philadelphia. You ain't so bad, Phillies. You ain't so bad. The next night, Phillies get up 5-2, blow the lead, lose 6-5. Their heralded rookie Kiekering was not as good as Fat, gave up with tying runs. Kimbrel gives up the game-winning run, the closer. Then there's the scene in Game 6. And I'd say Game 5, the Phillies come back, win 6-1. They go to Philly thinking they got this wrapped up. But go back to the movie in Rocky. There's a point towards the end of the fight. Rocky has one eye swollen shut. There's a famous scene where the cut man cuts his eye and it just bleeds out. It was disgusting the first time I saw it as a kid. The other eye's almost shut. And Apollo's just pounding away at him. And all of a sudden, Rocky won't go down. And Rocky, he couldn't even say anything. He just motions to Creed. Come on, Creed. Creed drops his head, much like the Philadelphia Phillies dropped their head in Game 6. Dropped their head, say, I can't take this. And what did Rocky do after that? Motioned him over. And Rocky started pounding Apollo Creed in the ribs. Body blow, body blow, body blow. Just pound them away. It's exactly what the Diamondbacks did. They never gave up. They became Rocky. The Phillies got cocky. The Diamondbacks became Rocky. And it's absolutely disgusting that another team treated us or became Rocky. It is kind of crazy when you think about it. Philadelphia has always been the city of underdogs, the blue collars. If you don't understand where our geographic location is, we are about 120 miles or about 70 kilometers south of New York. The big brother, big city. We're sort of like the neglected little brother. And then we're about 2.5 hours just north of Washington, D.C., with Baltimore nestled in between us. We're just sort of in the center. Always had been that underdog mentality. We weren't the financial capital of the world. We weren't the political capital of the world. We were the blue-collar capital of the world. Philadelphia, one time, right about 110 years ago, around the 19-teens, was the number one industrial city in the whole world. The number one producing industrial city in the world. That's how big our industrial blue-collar roots go back. Not that other cities don't have it. They have it here in Washington, D.C., but I'm saying that's how the roots go. Always the forever underdog. And this time we were the favorites. And we got so cocky after beating them. And it's not just the Phillies players who got cocky. The manager got cocky. The ownership got cocky. The fan base definitely got cocky. I'm in a text group with my friends. We're like, yeah, well, we got these next 2 games. Who would rather face, the Astros or the Rangers? And even though in the back of my mind I should have said, we still got 2 games to go. This isn't over just yet. But it felt that way. And why wouldn't it have? The Diamondbacks were clearly outmatched. Got outscored 15-3 in the first 2 games. Didn't even look like they wanted to be anywhere on the field. They were tight, but they went back home. And they started a kid named Fat, who shut them down, not only in Game 3, the Phillies' vaunted offensive lineup, but in Game 7. And this week, I was fortunate enough did some volunteering with a Ukrainian advocacy group. So our meetings went into the night. The last night we had a reception, so I didn't get to see these games. But more importantly, I didn't have all day to just obsess about them going into it. So in a way, I'm glad that I wasn't able to do that. But I got home to watch Game 6. It was already 4-1. And the Phillies just didn't look like they wanted to be there. I'm like, it's 4-1. Then it got to 5-1. Thompson, the manager, kind of said, all right, I'm going to pitch the pitchers I have no faith in. And we're going to get to those in a minute. Who they were and how striking that was. But we're going to talk about the hitters who in Game 6 and 7... our big sluggers, Kyle Schwarber, who had a decent LCS, by the way, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Nick Castellanos went a combined 1 for 27 in Game 6 at home. At home, where the Phillies have been 6-0 before that. How do you go 1 for 27? Schwarber was the only one who got the hit. Trey Turner turned back into early season Trey Turner, where he's swinging at everything low and outside, and Arizona knew that. He has no plate discipline. He reminds me of the old Philly Hunter Pence, who we got towards the end of that 2012-2013 run. Hunter Pence would swing at anything. There was no discipline. Castellanos was trying to hit an 8-run home run on every pitch he swung at. Harper kept missing the pitches that he had a chance to hit. He was more in the tough spot because Diamondbacks wanted to pitch around him, but he decided, you know what, I'm just going to swing away. And then once they knew that, they knew what they could throw to him. Last year in the playoffs in the LCS, he hit the mistake pitches. This year he didn't. I know he had a home run in Game 5, but it just wasn't enough. 1 for 27. That is, to me, is who the ultimate blame goes on. You were beating this team 15-3. You beat the team 6-1 in Game 5, heading into Philadelphia for the Game 6 and 7. That should never even come back to Philadelphia in the first place. How do you do it? How do you go 1 for 27? Are you that tired? The Diamondbacks pitchers have your number that much at that point that you can't get key hits? And that's the other issue. And it goes back to the beginning of the playoffs versus Miami. Yeah, they blew Miami out of the water. They beat Atlanta in, in 4 games. So we were 6-1 at one point, but we were leaving runners on base. Bryson Stott's grand slam in the clincher against Miami Game 2 cleared the bases, but we started leaving runners on base. I saw it in Atlanta. Game 2 especially. They lost 5-4 in a game they should have been up, and they should have won that game. I think in the first or second inning, they left the bases loaded. I think they got 2 runs in. They still left the bases loaded. They left 3 runs out there. It comes back to haunt you every single time. Every time the Phillies have runners on base, they couldn't really score them. They couldn't get them over, especially after 10-0. How do you go from scoring 10 runs to only getting 3 or 4 hits, and you're getting shut down by a pitcher named Fat who has a 5.72 ERA that no one's ever really heard of? How does that happen? Game 4 is a bullpen game. You're up 5-2. Your bullpen blows that game because the manager lost faith in key guys down the stretch. And the manager is the second person I want to blame here. And I want to give some credit to Torey Lovullo, the Arizona Diamondbacks manager. After Game 2, the Phillies were, like I said, winning those first 2 games 15-3, 5-3, 10-0. He made some adjustments in his lineup. He dropped down the rookie, probably the rookie of the world, Corbin Carroll, from the first spot to the second spot. He put Ketel Marte, who was an absolute stud in the NLCS, the MVP. He moved him to number 1, and they took the young catcher Gabby Moreno, moved him from 5 to 3. That worked. Marte was a hit. He's making contact. He's working. He's not working walks, but he's making a lot of contact, and he was getting on base. The Diamondbacks are moving people over. They're moving people over. I don't know how they did it with their cleanup hitter hitting 091, right? But he walked 7 times. So he got on base when he had to. And those little kinks, those little twerks, lineup switches, is something Thompson didn't do. The fan base was screaming. Bohm, no offense, cannot hit number 4. Stott 5. I mean, it was a bit ridiculous. Look, Bohm wound up hitting 280, 350 on base percentage, but in key moments of the games, he couldn't advance the runners. He didn't have a terrible series when you look at his stats. But the idea is that he just was not enough protection for Bryce Harper. JT Realmuto, in my opinion, would have been that protection. And hitting Bohm and Stott back-to-back, that didn't work at all. Stott did not have a great series in that 5-hole. And the manager, Thompson, after Game 3, when we got 3 hit, lost 2-1, should have made the switch. It didn't mess with the Diamondbacks' chemistry. No, it actually helped them. It showed that the manager was willing to make a change. The players understood they weren't performing in the positions that he put them in. He corrected the mistake early, and he made the change, and it worked. And it's not like the Diamondbacks went on a huge run. It just worked. Marte getting up to that number 1 hit was just hitting contact. Carroll was slumping. Like Bohm was slumping at the one point. It's okay to drop him down. And, the rationale is like, well, Thompson's a guy he doesn't make adjustments. He goes with what got him there. I get that. But there's nothing wrong with making a change. It's not that you're losing faith in Bohm. You can communicate that any which way you want. You can say, hey, look, we're just making a change. We want to spark. We want to spark. We want to put JT up there, see how he does. There's no reflection on you. You just want to see how he does, blah, 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 blah. You can say whatever you want. But that sort of inflexibility was stunning. And you had to make that change after game 3 or game 4. Although they did score 5 runs, the Phillies, in game 4, they still lost. You got to see that's not working. You can't make that change. Maybe you make that change. You can make that change whenever you want. I guess I'm contradicting myself. You can make it whenever you want. The longer in the season you go to wait to make the change, then it becomes like, well, loss of confidence, all this other stuff. But it was how he could not make that change and see that was astonishing to me. I thought him pulling, Ranger Suarez, Suarez pulling him in game 3, that wasn't Suarez's fault. That was the hitter's fault. Game 4, going with Keekering over Dominguez, I don't blame him. Dominguez shows you nothing there. It showed nothing but, he's a head case when you pitch him after the 5th inning. He tightens up. Alvarado was the only big-time pitcher you could really count on. And that goes to my third point, are the pitchers. These pitchers coming in from the bullpen, the whole thing against the Braves, they throw gas, 96 and above, 97 and above, and the Braves can't hit them. And that was true. The Braves could not touch our bullpen. But against guys that throw that hard all the time, coming out of the bullpen, they tend to be wild. Soto is very wild. Kimbrel broke down and started losing the strike zone. He was wild. Like I said, Dominguez, you don't know he's too unpredictable. You don't know if you're going to come in and he's going to blow them away. And he did have one good game against the Diamondbacks, but he had some bad ones. The rookie Keekering, you didn't know what you were getting from him. And that was all they really relied on. And those guys would come in and start walking people. When Kimbrel blew the lead, gave up 4 runs, gave up a 3-run home run to Alex Thomas, and then a single, he walked the leadoff hitter. Keekering, walking leadoff hitters. Alvarado is prone to walking leadoff hitters, but he's the better of the performers. Soto, too, he comes in, walks the leadoff hitter. Arizona knew. They said, wait for your pitch. Wait for your pitch. It'll be there. And it's okay if it's not. It's okay if it's not. 9 times out of 10, these guys get tight. They've thrown a lot of fastballs. Their arms are getting tired. They're losing control. That's what happens when your arm gets tired. That's exactly what happened. But it's also mental. It's also mental. You have a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, throw it. You're Craig Kimbrel. You're one of the all-time leading save people in the history of the game. Throw for strikes. Greg Soto, you're wild, but you have stuff. Throw for strikes. It was like, why are you afraid of these Diamondbacks hitters? And the Diamondbacks pitchers were not afraid of the Phillies hitters in the bullpen. They were not afraid. And when they did slump, the hitters started picking them up. And that's what did not happen in Game 6. Aaron Nola pitched extremely well up until Game 6. The hitters have to pick him. He had 1 bad inning, gave up 3 runs in the second inning. The hitters got to pick you up. It's only 1 bad inning. He's done it all year. But the Phillies act like they were down 8-0. I got home, the score was 4-1. I thought it was 14-1 the way they were approaching the plate against these guys. And give the Diamondbacks credit. There never knew who. I could name 3 Diamondbacks going into that series. Marte, only because of Sterling Marte, the longtime Marlin Met Pirates Phillies killer. Marte, maybe it's his brother Carroll. I've been hearing about him. He's been the only one people are talking about as the favorite for the Rookie of the Year. And Zach Gallen, who's their ace, who the Phillies beat around because he's a fastball pitcher, but he's from South Jersey. But I know Ginkel now. I know Sewald now. I know Montero now. I know these guys now. And I didn't realize the first baseman Walker, who hit .091 but had a .310 on base average from the Philadelphia area. I knew Evan Longoria. And you heard Tommy Pham from the Mets. But, these guys, Longoria is way past his prime. But much credit to him for sticking around. Tommy Phane's a journeyman. The only reason I knew him is the Mets traded him to the Diamondbacks. I mean, it was just, insane. Insane the way these guys that pretty much had no names beat the Phillies in 7 games. It's despicable. Guys like Paul Sewald, who comes over in a trade. The Diamondbacks pick him up in the trade deadline. I actually don't even know where. I think he came from Seattle. And you know why? Because Sewald was so good against the Phillies? He throws off-speed pitches. He knows how to mix them up. He understood that. Ginkel, throw the ball down. They're going to chase it. They're eventually going to chase. Sewald pitched for the Mets for a while. That's why I recognize his name. Just looking it up now. Let's see. They got him. So get down to the transactions. Yeah, traded by the Seattle Mariners down for Ryan Bliss, Dominic Cazzoni, and Josh Rojas. No idea who they are. No idea who those guys are. But this guy comes in, and to him and Ginkel and Sewald, they have not been scored upon the entire playoffs. That includes the Brewers, the Dodgers, and now the Phillies. No one has scored on them. That is similar if you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan going to 2008 when we had Ryan Madsen in the 8th, Bradledge in the 9th. That was it. Game was over. If you're not winning the game by the 8th inning against the Phillies in 2008, you're not winning. If you're not winning the game against the Diamondbacks by the 8th inning, 7th, 8th inning, you're not winning the game. And that's what the Rangers had to face. That's what we had to face. Yes, we did lose the one game 5-2, but we didn't get the runs off of Sewald or Ginkel, obviously. And that, to me, is like, those are shrewd moves. So after the pitchers, the next is the front office. Dombrowski and Fold. When you look at the people that they brought in, I'm going to go to Game 6 at the end. That was the 5-1 game. That was the one that Noel gives up 3 runs. It might have been 13 the way the Phillies hitters approached it. And as the game moved on, the Phillies hitters weren't hitting. They still could have. But Rob Thompson did the right thing. He started thinking about, who do I trust in Game 7 to pitch? Because they're not pitching in Game 6, so I'm going to put the guys I don't trust into Game 6. After Nola came Michael Lorenzen. Trade deadline pickup by Sam Fuld and Dave Dombrowski. Not a bad idea. Guy pitches a no-hitter. Couldn't do anything after that. Next guy out of the pen, Gregory Soto, the former all-star pitcher from the Detroit Tigers. And I say all-star with air quotes. And I say that because the Major League rule, which I support, is that every team, no matter how good or bad you are, has to have at least one representative in the all-star game. And Gregory Soto, for as bad as Detroit has been for, I feel like, decades, minus a year here and a year there, he was the representative. And we gave up a utility infielder and utility outfielder and I think a minor league catcher for their all-star. Their one all-star. That's all it took. Soto comes in, left-hander, flaming fastball. Flaming. 97, 98, 99. But we'll walk the first hitter with no problem. And that's what he did. Thompson didn't trust Soto. The next one out of the pen, Craig Kimbrell. Craig Kimbrell, he did not trust Craig Kimbrell in any situation in a Game 7. Now, this is a Hall of Fame pitcher who's pitched in so many big games and had so many saves, won some series. No faith in him that he could pitch anything in Game 7 if they needed him. And there's another pitcher that didn't pitch at all. His name is Taijuan Walker. These 4 pitchers were the ones that Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fuld went out and signed or traded for in the offseason. And Thompson had no faith in any 4 of them in a Game 7. And that to me is also striking. I know, it's hard for me to say, so this was an organizational failure from the players on the field, especially the hitters. Schwarber, 1 for 27. Schwarber, Harper, Turner, Castellanos. Ings Game 6 and 7. Alec Boehm, who I criticized before, showed up in Game 6 or Game 7. So did Stott. 2 runs. I'm looking at the game coming in. It's 4-2. They're playing like it's 14-2 in Game 7. Their heads dropped. Just like Apollo Creed's head dropped when Rocky motioned him. Come on, Creed. And Apollo was like, I have nothing more for you. And the fight went on, and that's when Rocky laid the punches into him, and then the bell rung to end the fight to a decision. Phillies got cocky. Diamondbacks became Rocky. And that's the hard part for Philadelphia to accept. That someone else was the Rocky and won. Philadelphia fans disgusting. They're leaving Game 6. 7th, they got to beat traffic home. What are you doing? It's Game 6 of the NLCS. This is Philadelphia. This isn't Atlanta. This isn't Arizona. This isn't LA. This isn't Houston, Texas, Miami. You stay to the last pitch and you support your team. That was disgusting to watch the fans walk out of there in Game 6. I don't want to blame them. No, the game was 5-1. But that's how you could read the mental approach. They knew the Phillies were done. They had no more left to give. No more. They get down in this Game 7. No more left to give. Last year when the Phillies made the World Series, it was a great run. 2022 came out of nowhere. The Phillies struggled to get in the playoffs and went on a miraculous run. And they lost Game 5. The JT Realmuto hit a shot to center field, and what a hell of a play by McCormick of Houston, who's also from Philadelphia. And I watched it, I was like, man, they're out of gas. And it was understandable. The critics will say, well, they're major league players. Well, yeah, they are. But it's like, if you're a marathon runner for amateurish, if you're an amateur marathon runner, and then all of a sudden you got to run a quarter more of a marathon, you may not make it to the end or be as powerful as you were until you get used to it and train for that. But this year, there's no excuse. Not when you're up 2-0. Then the NLCS against the Diamondbacks, who, again, Philadelphia fans, we could maybe name one. Everyone can name Zach Gallen. He's from the area, and that was part of it. And maybe they knew Carroll because he was the poster child heading into the NLCS. No one knew them. No one knew who these guys were. It's like no one in the boxing world knew who Rocky was except Philadelphians. They all knew who Apollo Creed was, but no one knew who Rocky was. And even when Rocky was getting beat, he didn't go down. Or he didn't give up. And this Diamondbacks team did not give up. Someone named Fat shut us down with a 5.72 with a fat ERA of 5.72 for 2 games. The Phillies scored 10 runs the next night. They couldn't even get 2-3 hits. Only 1 run. The game they lost 6-5, they should have easily lost that game. Like before, they got 1 gift run. It was on a throwing error, and that scored 2 runs. The offense could not do anything. They're swinging for the fences every single pitch after that 10-0 win. Castellanos was first at bat in Arizona. It's like his helmet came flying off. His bat, I don't know where his bat was like swinging from the heels. And the Diamondbacks knew this. And the way, you neutralize aggressive hitting is with off-speed pitching. Off-speed pitching. Sneak a fastball in here. Off-speed pitching. Because they're not going to wait. The Phillies hitters are not patient. Trey Turner, what happened to you? Why did you turn back into Hunter Pence? Harper, to me, he just started missing those pitches. One, because he knew the Diamondbacks weren't going to give him much, but they had to throw at least 1 or 2 mistake pitches. Then eventually they started challenging him because he was also up there trying to hit 10-run home runs, which was different than he was in the regular season. In the regular season, and maybe against Atlanta, he was fine with knocking what he would get and knock it up, for first base, for a single or a double, not trying to hit the home runs, but then he turned into the home run hitter. The only one that I thought offensively the entire playoffs was great was JT. He slumped up and down, didn't hit all that great in the NLCS. And Brandon Marsh. Like, they were the 2 guys who were like, all right, we have a chance now with Marsh and Realmuto. The rest of them, you always have a chance with Harper. But the rest of them, you're like, I don't know. Schwarber, who knows? He hits the first pitch he sees in the LCS for a home run, and everyone thought we were going to the series then. It was a disgusting way for this team to choke, and it was a surprising choke. The last team that blew a 3-2 series lead and lost in Game 7 was none other than your Philadelphia 76ers, who did it just in Easter or in April or May. I don't even know what it was. But that wasn't surprising. They got up 3-2 on the Boston Celtics, winning Game 6 except for the last 4 minutes, choked that away. Then were relatively tied with Boston in the first half, and then got outscored 33-10 in the third quarter and just gave up. But we weren't surprised by that. That's the chemistry of that team. This team, the Phillies, doesn't have that chemistry. They love playing. I mean, it was a lovable team. These last two teams have been lovable. And it's just shocking to see them just disappear like that under pressure. Because we're from Philadelphia. We're not used to, first of all, we're not used to the pressure, I guess. But just to fold like that under pressure, we're used to it. It was just, but to do it at home, like the Sixers, for them, they lost on the road. And that's one thing to lose, that's losing on the road. At home, where the Phillies were 6-0, and to lose the last two games of the season that were your last two games, it's just unfathomable. It's disgusting. It's despicable. It's horrendous. And they didn't get blown out. 5-1, it's not that close, but it's not that far off. And 4-2 is definitely not that far off. And they're playing like they're down 15-1 and 14-2. And credit those Seattle pitchers, Glinkle in the 8th and Sewald in the 9th. They couldn't be scored upon. And the Phillies knew that. They just knew that those guys had their numbers. Journeymen. Who are off-speed pitchers. They don't pound you with fastballs. And the Phillies could only hit the fastball pitchers. They, hit Zach Gallen in 2 games. He was the only one they kind of hit consistently. Because he threw fast, they hit fastballs. But then once those all-speed pitchers come and get it in, walk a guy, don't worry about it. The next guy's going to ground into a double play, strike out, or pop up most likely. Because they're starting to feel the pressure. Again, credit Torey Lovello for making the lineup changes. Going into Game 3. He saw his leadoff hitter, the potential Rookie of the Year, Corbin Carroll. Let's drop him to second. Let's put Marte up there, who's having a phenomenal playoff run. I think he's hitting every single playoff game he's played in this year. And let's bring up the young catcher Montero for 3. See what he can do. And it worked. I feel like Marte was on base every time. It was like watching Bryce Harper last year, on base almost every time they had, every time they're at a bat, through a walk or a base hit. Then when they got into the Phillies bullpen, they knew what pitchers weren't holding people on. Kimbrel, he doesn't hold on anybody. He hates the pitch count. Hates runners at second base. Balks them over to third base. I mean, come on, man. It's not like you were raised you weren't you're a Hall of Famer. You've come into games before with runners on second base and third base. Like, why all of a sudden is the pitch count era bothering you with that? Let's balk them over. It didn't cost them a game, but it's like, are you that sensitive? And one guy who doesn't deserve the blame as much as the hitters and there's others is Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola pitched phenomenal against Miami, Atlanta, Arizona in Game 2. And yet we had one bad inning. And the whole town's like, get rid of him! Not the whole town. The Phillies are kind of lukewarm, and I'm going to go into why I think that is. But it's like, what are you going to replace him with? Well, that's Dombrowski's job to do. Well, give us some ideas. Like, there's one other free agent pitcher out there that kind of matches Nola, and that's Blake Snell. Guy who couldn't get it done in Tampa Bay. Guy who can't get it done in San Diego. Not so much his fault. He pitches ERA well, but in pressure situations, it gets to him. I'm not sure. Is that what you want to do? You want to sign him to the similar deal that Nola's going to get from either L.A., St. Louis? And Nola's going to go out there. He's going to, with his, they kind of tweaked his delivery a little bit. It seemed to work. And, he's going to go out there with this tweak and become like a Cy Young winner. There's not many pitchers that have been better statistically than Aaron Nola. And I think it would be you got to be careful what you ask for. There's some times where I was ready to get rid of him, this year, but then he made some adjustments. I was like, let me see him in September. Let me see him in October. He outside of one start where he gave up, 3-4 runs, we're ready to run him out of town. Be careful. Now, my theory is that with him and Zach Wheeler, that Dombrowski wants the two young pitchers, Andrew Painter, who should have been in the majors this year, and Mick Abel, kind of take their spots in the rotation down the line, which will open up some more payroll flexibility. And also Nola and Wheeler are getting later in their career. I could see that being a long-term strategy, but Painter's out all next year with rotator cuff, with Tommy John surgery. Abel may not be ready for the majors, next year if you let Nola walk. You're going to have to trade some young guys for his proven talent. I mean, I told you, Detroit Tigers' own all-star, Gregory Soto. It cost us 2 backup players or 2 utility players and a minor league catcher and maybe a minor league someone else too that I didn't mention. That's what it took to get the lone all-star from the Detroit Tigers. Where Matt Vreeling and Nick Maton, who fit in that clubhouse well. Maton had some very key hits against Sandy Alcantara. Verling, he was a guy, but if you ask any Philly fan now, would you rather have Pache long term or Verling long term? Pache, absolutely. Nick Maton, I don't know. There's no one, he's not bringing much to the table on a daily basis or even a sub basis that I can be excited over. That I feel like, oh yeah, that's who cost us. It's just hard to watch the Philadelphia Phillies, who became cocky, and watch the Diamondbacks turn into Rocky. It's just a slap in the face. This team choked, starting with the hitters. 1 for 27. That goes from Schwarber, number 1 hitter, Turner, number 2 hitter, Harper, number 3 hitter, Castellanos, number 7 hitter. They were 1 for 27. They're your sluggers. Rob Thompson should have made an adjustment. Get Alec Bohm out of the cleanoff spot. Drop him down a little bit. What would it have done? Made Bohm worse? He couldn't have gotten much worse. What's he not going to catch the ball? No, he's a major leaguer now. He's proven third baseman. He's a proven great fielding third baseman. Not just good, above average to great now. Dropping Stott. What's going to hurt Stott? He's already a Gold Glove candidate. The inflexibility of that. Relief pitchers can't throw strikes. You can't come in and keep walking people in the beginning of the game. Or the inning, sorry. You're coming in, you're walking people. The first player, the first batter. The Diamondbacks know you're tight. Kickering. You have a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. All you want to do is hit them with sliders, low and away. Throw your freaking fastball, dude. Let it go. They don't have much paper on you. That's why we have you in that spot. That's why Fat was in number 3 spot. There's not much paper on them. And when I say paper, notes or, where they can study their tendencies. Kimbrel, you're a Hall of Fame pitcher. Throw a strike. Soto, you're a major league pitcher. Throw a strike. Be confident. You're the favorites. You have to let them beat you with your best stuff. And those 3 pitchers down the line were afraid to throw their best stuff for strikes. And that's unfathomable to me. Unfathomable. I understand why the Phillies hitters went into a slump. They're aggressive hitters. They're going to swing at anything. But the Phillies pitchers who also had the high heat, throw it for strikes. If you get hit with your best stuff, you get hit. Tip your cap. But don't pitch scared. Do not pitch scared. And the Phillies pitchers pitch scared. Thompson managed a little bit scared. The hitters definitely played like they were beaten and demoralized. At home, where we're 6-0. We had the best playoff record at home in postseason history in the last 30 years. Or whatever the records go back to. Or minimum amount of games. It's a despicable loss. Tip your hat to those Diamondbacks. They kept punching away. Like Rocky punching the ribs of frozen cows hanging up in the meat locker during his training while Apollo's taking press conferences and filming commercials. Then when the games start, Rocky took his punches, got knocked down a few times. Rocky punched back. He kept saying, and he saw weakness in Creed. He goes, Creed, you ain't so bad. Bring it. Shocked Creed. And Creed gives him more. Game 5. Creed gave him more. Game 5. Game 6. At home, Aaron Nola. It's when Rocky, in the famous scene, he began that game with his eyes closed on the brink of elimination, being knocked out. One eye's shut, Other eyes half open, just motions to Apollo. Come on. Motions with his hands. Doesn't say a word, and Apollo's head just drops. And that's what the Phillies hitters did. Our best players and our leaders just dropped their heads. Pitchers couldn't throw strikes. Hitters didn't want to hit. The Diamondbacks. Front office, back to where we are every offseason. How are we going to rebuild the bullpen? Because Thompson showed Dombrowski and Sam Fuld, I don't trust Taijuan Walker, the second big free agent we signed. I don't trust the all-star, again in air quotes, you traded for in Gregory Soto. I don't trust Michael Lorenzen, your only trade deadline pickup worth of note. They also picked up a backup infield named Castro. And we don't touch your best free agent signing in Cade Krimble. I don't trust those four guys. Back to the drawing board next year. It's just despicable the way this team lost. It just makes you angry because they had it in their laps the entire World Series. The Astros were eliminated. Astros were gone. Didn't matter if it was the Astros or Rangers. Rangers beat us earlier in the season, very beginning of the season, had our number for 3 years. This should have been a cakewalk, especially after Game 2, that winning 10-0 up 2-0. Should have been a cakewalk to the World Series. They should never have left Arizona to come back to play in Philly. They should never have had to do that. They lost 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 to the Arizona Diamondbacks in the LCS. When I put it up there in the Philadelphia Pantheon of collapses that I remember, I mean, it has to go up to the Eagles-Buccaneers collapse. When that year, the Buccaneers, coached by John Gruden, as we all know, comes into Philadelphia and just waxes the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, whereas the Eagles they floated to the number 1 seed, floating in the playoffs. We're going to play the Oakland Raiders in the Super Bowl if they made it. Oakland was kind of won as an underdog. I mean, that was like our year. I was listening to sports radio, and they said that was the Eagles' year under Andy Reid. That was the one year they should have and could have won it all. And this was the Phillies' equivalent to that. The only difference is that the Phillies weren't the favorite coming into the season. But once we got past Atlanta, and then we saw the Diamondbacks upsetting the Dodgers, like, it was ours to lose. And we got cocky. Diamondbacks were like Rocky. And that's exactly what happened. It's just one of the biggest playoff disappointments ever. I also think the Sixers versus the Raptors with Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, Kawhi Leonard hits that Game 7 shot. Again, the Sixers are the favored number 1 seed, losing to Toronto. And Toronto, credit, they go on to win the championship that year. But that was heartbreaking. That was one of the worst losses I remember. The Phillies loss in the World Series last year was, of course, heartbreaking. You wanted them to win. But A, they were the complete underdog to get there. B, they had taken Houston to Game 6, where no one thought that could probably happen. And they just ran out of gas. Like I said, I mean, you could say that, they're professional athletes and, get paid millions. Yeah, sure, they're in best shape. But if you're an amateur marathon runner, and all of a sudden the next race is extended by 25% longer than normal, you're going to run out of gas. It's going to happen. You may kind of prepare for the possibility of it, but until it actually happens, a day or two before the race begins, you may not be ready for it. But this is not an excuse this year. This was paved the way. Let's get this team. We have everything going for us. The hitters are hitting. The starting pitching is, one of the best in the league. The bullpen at the time was one of the best, even going into the Arizona series. And all of a sudden, no one talked about Arizona's bullpen. I didn't realize that those pitchers for Arizona, no one scored on them. Glinkle in the 8th, Sewald in the 9th. No one had scored on them in the playoffs. That's Ryan Madson, Brad Lidge territory right there. If Arizona wins this World Series and Sewald doesn't give up a run, I mean, then we can kind of identify with that. But again, Brad Lidge was known. He was a known proven closer. who just happened to have the perfect season. And Ryan Madsen was, I don't think many people knew who Ryan Madsen was outside of Philly, but he was sort of a reclamation project. He was brought up to be a starter and found his niche, was disappointing, and found his niche as a setup man. And it's just the parallels were just uncanny. Other playoff losses that I can think of, I put that the Bucks loss. I think the Philadelphia Eagles Arizona loss stings with me against the Cardinals, where they lost, but it was the defense couldn't stop the running game. Tim Hightower, just like they need one more stop and they win that game. And Arizona plays Pittsburgh in that Super Bowl. I don't know if the Eagles would have beat Pittsburgh. We'll never know. That was another hard one to swallow. And many Philadelphia Game 7s, Flyers Game 7s that lost. They lost to Buffalo in a Game 7 which they should have won. Roman Cechmanek melted down and lost like 8-0. Screaming at his bench, do something. Against the Buffalo Sabres. I think that was right around when the Eagles lost to Tampa Bay. It may have been the same year, and it's just, they're up there. But this one, it's as a Phillies loss, it's not as bad as 2011. That team who had won 103 games, the vaunted rotation, lost in 5 games to the St. Louis Cardinals. That one was harder to swallow. Because again, that was another, we have this. We're the best team in baseball in the regular season. We have this rotation. There's no way. And the Cardinals beat us. And it's like, and I think they went on to win the World Series, actually. This Phillies loss is second to that in my lifetime. Second to that. 2009, Phillies lose to the Yankees in the World Series. That was tough to swallow, but it was also talent versus talent. Like, we kind of recognized the Yankees were a little bit more talented than the Phillies were, top to bottom. But that wasn't the case in 2011. It's definitely not the case this year. It's Matt Kwasiborski. So just trying to get this off my chest of how despicable this loss was. And to sum it all up, Phillies hitters. Schwarber, number 1 hitter. Turner, number 2 hitter. Bryce, number 3. Castellanos for slugger at number 7. 1 for 27 in the last game 6 and 7 at home. Castellanos had 1 hit the entire LCS. This Phillies team, this Phillies fan base, the ownership, the managers, the radio people, we all got cocky after game 2. All got cocky. We're going to walk to the playoffs, walk to the World Series. We're going to win the World Series. This team is just locked in. And we should have thought that. But we're unlike Philadelphia. We got cocky. We didn't say, hey, guys, we got to get 2 more against this Diamondbacks team, and we're going into their place. They're going to play a little harder at home. They're going to come out. They shouldn't win. They might get 1 out of the 2 that were out of the 3. We should win the series, that 3-game series, 2-1 at worst. At worst. Lost 4 out of 5. Lost the last 2 at home. Despicable performance. Terrible, horrible, just put their head down, demoralizing. As I said, when Rocky looked at Apollo Creed in the ring, at one point said, "You ain't so bad, Creed, you ain't so bad." Creed kind of was like, "I'm in a fight now. Let's see how I answer." Comes out, that's probably how the Phillies were after losing game 6. Sorry, after they won 6-5. That's when Rocky comes out saying, "You ain't so bad." The next game, game 5, Phillies win 6-1. Creed's pounding them. Pounding Rocky. Give him all he's got. Next thing you know, Rocky's got one eye open. The other one's just shut from swollenness. Just motions his hands, and Apollo drops his head and just starts, and Rocky just pounds away at Apollo until the bell rings to end the fight. Both guys there. And that's what happened. And it's very hard to be a Philadelphia fan or someone from Philadelphia and realize that the other team became Rocky in our own stadium and in our own house. And that's what happened. I'm going to wrap up the Matt Kwasiborski show. I'm not even going to play the taps. Just remember to inspire the inspiration. Do not wait for the inspiration to inspire. You have a great weekend, everybody.